Welcome to the Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast, a space where all spiritual seekers are honored and celebrated. This podcast was born from the journeys of your hosts, who have each faced her own dark night of the soul, but they've emerged with an unshakable belief in divine connection, cosmic inspiration, and her true life's calling. Join us on a journey of personal growth, transformation, and magical self-discovery. Your first co-host is Chloe Brown, a gifted intuitive empath and shadow work life coach. Your second co-host is Keone Starr, an intuitive energy worker and acclaimed past life regressionist. The Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast starts now.
Haley Bea is a psychic medium and host of the Opening the Door podcast. In her psychic mediumship work, she loves to bring through spirit guides and loved ones who have crossed over to deliver potent messages. Haley invites all who are ready to start their spiritual journey and joy without fear throughout her work on her podcast and the people she works with. Haley believes that if everyone were more connected to their intuition, the world would be a more vibrant place. I can say that I've had few readings from her, and I always leave uplifted and feeling that her reading resonated deeply. I adore you, Haley, and we are so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I am so excited to just chat away with the two of you this morning.
Yay. So let's dive deep into it first and foremost. Let's start with your journey. When did you first realize that you had intuitive or psychic abilities, and what did you call them at that time?
I have a kind of inflection point that I want to talk about for this that I have not told on my own podcast or anything. So this can be a your podcast exclusive, which is fun. Okay, so I had some young experiences. The house I grew up in, absolutely, there's like more than just me in the house. Sisters, my father even have experienced spirit energetic activity in that house. So it's not surprising that I also experienced that growing up. One of my youngest memories of seeing a spirit in the house was probably when I was 6 or 7, but that is not the one I'm gonna tell now. What I'm gonna talk about now is the actual realization moment, and that's why I want to talk about it, because back then I was just oh, I don't know what's happening. In high school, do you guys remember the show Long Island Medium?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Long Island Medium was really happening at that time. It was on, I think, TLC all the time. And I was a TLC girly, so I was always on the TLC. So Long Island Medium would play, and if I was watching it alone, I don't know how to explain it. I would just feel like I had spirits all around me. It was almost like an activation of some sort. I would watch it and then I would just feel like I had spirits standing behind me. And so I was like, okay, I just can't watch this show anymore. It's just too freaky for me. And
Wow.
I had mentioned that to my aunt, who is a fantastic spiritual friend of mine now. We really do a lot of spiritual stuff together, which is fantastic. But I had mentioned that back in high school to her. And she said, well, maybe it's just because you also have those abilities. And it just flipped a switch for me. It was just that realization moment, oh, yeah, I guess that could be. So then I started moving throughout my understanding of what was going on, that maybe I did have some form of connection. So that's why I would call that probably a bigger realization moment. I don't know, looking back, it absolutely was. I don't know if at the time I realized that it was, but looking back, absolutely, that was the moment that I was oh, yeah, something could certainly be going on here.
Yes, that's so cool. I was just thinking this morning, actually, of some of the older shows that I used to watch growing up and how I identified with them or didn't. And this morning, all I could think of actually was Bewitched. So it was really funny that that just came up. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Did you have any struggles or doubts when you first started developing this intuition? It seems to me like through what you just said. Perhaps you had a support system, so it wasn't such a mental struggle.
I definitely feel really lucky. I did not have a lot of rejection along my journey in terms of like friends and family members. I know that that is a really common experience for people. I totally hold that that is a lot of the time a common experience for people. I feel lucky that that was not the case for me. I think when I began to actually develop, so it really ebbed for a while once I got into like the workforce of life, like the 9 to 5, blah, 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 like I kind of ebbed away for a bit. And I really feel like our spiritual do tend to ebb and flow if we're not like specifically working on them, which is totally fine and really normal. At some point, I was like, I just need to figure this out. I want to work on this. So I started working on it. And yeah, then there's like that whole new wave of doubt that's like, is this? Because you're really also trying to establish your belief system too. Like everything feels new. If you grew up in organized religion, you're reestablishing what that means to you. I went through a time of being like a total atheist in college. So like I was reestablishing that. Like there was just a lot of reestablishment along the way. I think there's just a tendency to doubt experiences and doubt when you are starting to work on this stuff because it just feels almost too magical. Like all the stuff we grew up with in pop culture, the magic, the excitement. And then you find out, yeah, like some of it is actually accessible, not in the way that we see it in pop culture with maybe waving a wand and sparks coming out of it and stuff, but that moment where the questions definitely start to roll. So yeah, absolutely, I did experience that. That was a really long way of me saying yes.
So, Haley, when you were listening to Teresa from the Long Island Medium, were you seeing spirits while you were listening to the show, or did you feel them, hear them? What kind of gave you the idea that you were connecting, especially when you were listening to that?
Yeah, it was it was more of a feeling. And this feeling actually still comes through when I do mediumship readings. It's actually really interesting. So basically, what I would feel if I was sitting on the couch watching, I would just feel intuitively that spirit was like stepping closer to my own energetic field. Though I didn't have the words for energetic field back then, but it almost felt like there was just like 4 or 5 people in the room staring at the back of my head. If that makes sense. You know, that like sense that you've like, okay, someone's watching me, or like that was the feeling. So it was definitely like an intuitive feeling and knowing. Yeah, nothing seen when I was doing that. Yeah.
My next question is kind of twofold. A lot of people feel like they might be intuitive, but truly aren't sure. And I wanted to ask you how you felt like you interpreted those, but also more specifically throughout your life, not just now. Because I feel for me at least, my answer a year ago is definitely not the same answer I have now. Could you speak to that and how that's evolved for you and what that really looked like? What did you play with or experiment with or feel like resonated with you or maybe didn't?
It's so interesting. Like, I just want to touch on you. Yeah, our definitions of things can grow so much with even in like 6 months or a year or something. And I think just a note for listeners, I just think it's so much easier to just allow yourself to change than to try to be like, well, I believed this, so I have to keep believing that. Just let yourself change. It's okay. And I feel like I'm really getting off on a tangent. I'll go back to the question. There's so much in like today's culture that's like, oh, you said this one time, so it must be like the thing. Like you cannot change your mind. There's this weird thing around like the pride of changing your mind or admitting that you were wrong or admitting that you've changed your mind. And it almost feels like people don't want to let each other do that. So that's definitely been a huge part, like thread within my journey is like allowing myself to change and change my mind and also allowing other people to do that. So that's just like a total side note tangent. I'm a big supporter of taking a class or two. I just feel like it's so nice to have a structure around when you begin and like just to learn some basics. Also, at the beginning of my journey, I just started doing what I call passive learning, which is listening to podcasts. So I chose a bunch of podcasts. Some of them stuck, some of them didn't. Some of them I still listen to today. If I was going to break it into 3 parts, pick some passive learning, which would be listening to podcasts or reading a book or two, and then a little bit of active learning once you're ready to start, and a little bit of self-taught stuff, maybe. Like working with my guides was just something I had like listened to some podcast episodes about and then just decided to start doing that on my own. That wasn't something that I worked with in class, but to start to get like basics and an understanding of how to tap in, I always think it's nice to start with some form of a class. Again, just letting yourself evolve. Like if you're really interested in like working with your own aura, your own energetic field, and then like 6 months later, it's like, oh, well, I actually think this is really interesting. Just let yourself do that. Like
Mhm.
the just don't pigeonhole yourself into one thing. I think it's important to do just like a big fun array of learning. I think it's more fun that way too.
Indeed, sky's the limit, right?
Yeah.
Always learning. So, what are some things for you during your development of your intuition or psychic abilities that you experienced, and how did those make you feel? For example, the first time that I heard and saw a spirit and had direct message, I thought I was going to have to check myself into a loony bin. Did you have experiences like that, and what did that look like for you?
I definitely had experiences like that before I worked on development, I would say. And there was a block for me where I was having all these experiences. I was like regularly waking up and feeling like there was spirit in my room, in like the room that I grew up in. That was happening in college as well. I had a really freaky experience in my dorm room in college where I woke up and like in the middle of the night and I just with my eyeballs saw a very dark figure standing near my closet. And it was so I've never experienced ever since something I just knew it was malicious. Like it was very scary. Goosebumps. Like I just had that feeling, that internal feeling like this is not. But I had no idea how to deal with it back then because I didn't even have the
Right.
language to deal with it. So I had those experiences, especially that one was like, oh, like something must be wrong with me because I also grew up in organized Christian religion and there was just this idea that like do not connect to any spirits. They are evil and they will possess you. Like that whole rhetoric was really
Yeah.
prevalent for me. And so I was just automatically scared. So I also never wanted to go to a psychic because I was afraid they were just going to be like, yeah, you are crazy. You need like that. Like I was like, what if it's not confirmed and actually I'm just not okay? So I really resisted that for a long time. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely had those experiences and that's why I just let myself not do it for a long time. And when I finally started opening up, I think I just had a lot more trust that I was going to be okay. But yes, certainly in those experiences that I was not trained to deal with. Yeah, absolutely. I was questioning what was going on in the brain.
Do you believe now that you're so much further on that malicious energy is demonic, like the Christian religion would teach us? Or what's your perspective?
That is something I think about often. I definitely don't prescribe to the idea that there is like this idea of like heaven and hell and like the devil is always trying. Like, I just feel like there's this really interesting idea, and especially like maybe like Baptist Christianity, that's like the devil is always trying to get to you. The devil is always trying its best to claw you down. And it's like there's just this like warfare idea with it, right? I do
Mhm.
not subscribe to that. I certainly do believe that darkness and light exist, as above, so below, and as below, so above. I don't know, I really grapple with using the word negative, but I think it does exist. Like the negative or these like really deep, heavy energies absolutely do exist. There is trickster people in life. There are trickster spirits in spirit. There's like all this mirroring that
Yes.
happens. So I believe that the universe is overall a loving force. But yeah, this is something that I really like to like think about, give myself a bit of a squiggly line to work with. Like, how am I feeling? How am I feeling? How am I feeling? I think I'll get there someday about like maybe really a core belief. But yeah, I think right now, even years in, I'm still kind of grappling with that. Does the devil exist?
In any
No,
capacity.
but in a capacity there is evil for sure, you know?
What would you do now if you saw that energy? Be gone, give it a little spell, tell it, I'm tired, please.
So what happened was I woke up, I saw it, and I just went, "What the fuck?" And my roommate turned the light on and I was just shook. I was shook and so I honestly feel if I'm gonna be like a little funny silly about it, that was a spell against it. Like just being like, what the fuck are you doing in here? Get out. Like my pushed out. So that was how I handled it that time. It might be similar this time, but I would have more tools after the fact because that happened in the middle of the night. So I would have a little bit more tools after the fact too. In the morning, I'm going through, I'm probably light cleansing that night in my mind's eye. I'm cleansing with light. I'm doing that. And then in the morning, I'm probably doing a simmer pot for clearing. I'm probably vacuuming my room. Like I have the tools now to be able to do a little like more clearing. Yeah, words are powerful for sure.
I like that.
One,
That's the
oh,
what
yeah,
the fuck spell. I like that.
absolutely. What the fuck spell? Just use it when you need to. One fascinating thing I have found by interviewing other people, like on opening the door, is sometimes for some reason, and I'm just fascinated in this, the Lord's Prayer just it's really interesting, and I wonder about this could be a whole episode, but I wonder about is it the actual words we speak in the Lord's Prayer? Or is it simply our intention of bringing in love and light and protection? It has the Lord's Prayer kind of turned into some form of a protection spell? That type of thing. Like, we could think about that. We could think of so much about that. But yeah, that's
Yes.
really fascinating. So if you do have any sort of connection still to organized religion, you feel comfortable doing that, and something is fucking with you in the night, go ahead and use it. I don't think God's going to be mad at you for using it.
And what if the spirit is Christian?
Ooh,
So
go further.
yeah, so it means something to that spirit if it's trying to be dense or heavy or trickster and you're pulling that out of your pocket. They're like, damn,
Yeah,
she did
she
it.
got me.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating.
I love that you said that while you were talking about your what the fuck spell. That's exactly what I was thinking is the intention of get out. It's not exactly what you said, but it's exactly what you encompassed. And I feel like that is something I've thought of a lot is I have heard in a lot of these interviews through across lots of podcasts, mostly including yours, where they are open and they are honest about what worked for them. And I've also grappled with that idea. Is it the intention or is it the words? So I am so grateful you brought that up.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing to think about. It kind of is a circle and it's like a chicken or the egg almost.
Hmm.
And we're never going to know exactly. And that is hard to know too. Like I just want to know exactly sometimes. And spirituality, if there's nothing else that I've learned in the journey, is that just sometimes we just have to be okay with not knowing fully why it works, or not knowing fully what's the reason, or not knowing, just not fucking knowing. And that is hard.
Yes, in the military, we call that the hurry up and wait.
Mm,
Except what I love about witchcraft is I can educate and it bypasses the time because then I find the magic in the mundane moments. Like, oh my gosh, did you see the way that raindrop hit that pedal? Because I live in the Pacific Northwest.
yeah.
What do you feel are some blocks that stop people from trusting their intuition? You kind of spoke about it. Elise Wells, a previous guest of ours, another amazing podcast host, she also spoke deeply about trusting herself from a very young age. Some of us don't immediately come out with that amazing skill set. Could you speak to that a little bit, what that looks like for you?
Absolutely. Elise is so cool, so awesome. I think she calls it perfect trust, if I'm right. And she taught me that, and we've chatted a little bit about it too, and it's so fantastic. So yeah, Elise is so cool. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely, and I spoke to this a little bit earlier, but yeah, I definitely didn't trust myself at first. I didn't trust the mind or my mind, like what's going on up there. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of the time we're just in society, one, we're taught to like outsource our trust, especially if you grew up in an organized religion, you're outsourcing your trust to like an omnipotent God, the big all-knowing God, and the ministers who or priests who do the service, all of that stuff. So if you grew up in organized religion, you're learning to outsource that way. I think especially as women, we just learn to outsource a lot of power in a lot of different ways. Like there's just a lot of outsourcing that happens, and it just is the way that the world is. We will slowly change it, all of that, rah rah, yay. But for now, it's really about, yeah, returning and establishing trust again. So I think it's just like a muscle that you have to start flexing. and then the training happens differently for everybody. But I think there's a few things that could help if you kind of want to do a little bit more like subconscious work. I am a huge fan of EFT tapping. So you can find plenty of great guided YouTube videos for EFT. I'm sure you could find some for self-trust. So if you kind of want to work with it in a bit of like a somatic and subconscious brain way, you could absolutely do that to start establishing that way. And then I think it's just trusting your tiny little intuitive hits. So if it's like a really good fun example is yesterday was planning on having a do nothing Saturday. I haven't had one in a long time. I really want to do nothing. But my sister's boyfriend texted me and my husband. He loves hoagies. And for people in the Midwest, that's a sub. So he loves hoagies. He like likes to go all over for hoagies. And so he was like, I really want to try this hoagie spot. It's posted about so much. It's in Maryland, about an hour drive. And I was like, do I want to go get a hoagie? Like, I'm a vegetarian, so I like a cheese hoagie, sure. But like, I'm not gonna go get some like, it's not like the number one food. But I was like, you know what? Let's be spontaneous. Let's go. I promise listeners, this is going somewhere. So we go, we park, and it's on like a cute little main street. And painted on the wall is a bunch of otters. And I had a few days ago asked my guides for a sign that I was like, just give me some sort of weaselly animal. I love weaselly animals. And otters have always been some of my favorite. And so I just like, we parked, I saw them on the wall, and I was like, if I had not followed the slight intuitive nudge to just go get a hoagie in a different state, like I would not have gotten that sign. So that's kind of a long story to say, like, this, the little intuitive nudges, if you are just feeling like, oh, I really feel like I need a lemon water right now, but I have no lemons. Okay, well, can we run to a corner store and get lemons? Like that is where the spiritual interaction might happen, or like something like that. So just the tiny intuitive nudges, I think, if you follow them, they don't have to be about gigantic life choices. It just helps train your intuitive self, your ego self, and all of these selves that we have to work together instead of always distrusting each other, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. Do you want to elaborate a little bit about that if that's the first time our listeners are hearing about these different selves? Could you educate us a little bit about what you think on that?
When I think about this logically, I'm like, oh my God, do I sound crazy? Another question, like, oh, I have all these selves living inside of me. Like, what is going on with that? But I think that, like, obviously we have our ego self that helps drive us in the world. It helps keep us protected. It helps keep us safe. That is really what the ego is trying to do. So that might be, if you're unfamiliar with like your ego voice and your intuition voice, your ego voice might be like, well, if you present yourself online, it's going to be really embarrassing and people might say mean things to you. That's like just your ego voice trying to keep you safe, trying to keep you from being hurt. And it's like, it's so normal for that to happen. Your intuition voice might sound like, well, what if we just tried? And it might be softer, it will be calmer. For me, my ego feels frantic, clawing, and upset a lot of the time. And that's how I can kind of read if it's my ego talking. And I really feel one of the biggest things you can do in the beginning of your journey is suss out what's your ego talking and what's your intuition talking. It just gives you such a great foundation for being able to listen to your intuition. So the easiest tip I have, this is how I started, was just starting to ask myself with a lot of thoughts, maybe not every thought, but a lot of them, ego or intuition. It's just the simple question. And then you can usually just name it by how it feels. I have this memory of being in my bathroom and like looking in the mirror and being like, something about my thought about my hair, or like something like, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, oh, that's just my ego talking. Just this upset voice of what if this, what if that, what if that? Try to find the way it feels in your body. That can be helpful as well. But yeah, sussing out the difference between the ego and the intuition and how they sound, I think can be really, really helpful for just intuitive growth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you summed that up so well. Could you speak a little bit about how that intuition, once we define that it is that intuition, how does that speak to differently to people? Could you talk about that, and from what you've seen and learned through your experiences and interviews?
I think this is a great time to lean into like which clair you might be working with. Clairaudience is when you're hearing words, phrases, sounds inside your mind. Well, I call it the mind's ear. You're not hearing them with your outside ear, your physical ear, but it's almost like it's when you read a book and you can hear the words inside your head, that type of thing. So that's clairaudience within your mind's ear. So for me, my intuition can come through and be like, go get a hoagie, like that type of thing. I'll hear it. And then you have your feeling, your knowing, cognizance.
Cognizance.
No,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
And those two things, the clairaudience and claircognizance, I think people really question whether what they're getting in those two ways are even real or valid. I think they're tough to validate.
I think claircognizance is really tough to validate. And even in readings, it's just like, I'm not seeing something, I'm not hearing something. I just know that you're looking for a new job. Like that type of thing. I cannot place a finger on it.
Mhm.
And yeah, that can be really hard developing because yeah, you're like, where did this come from? And then the trust just like, and I think maybe this is just coming now, but I feel like sometimes we put like a ton of weight on trying to figure out our intuitive hits almost. I could have sat in the car on the way and been like, why did I choose to come to the hoagie place? Like that, like we just want to like think about it so much. But I feel like if we just be like, okay, I chose that, maybe it would just help roll a little bit easier. I don't know. It really depends on your personality.
I was thinking that as well. So what I was interpreting is those of us who are overthinkers might have a little bit of a struggle ahead.
Yeah, that letting go is it's hard. It's hard.
Do you believe there's a difference between psychic abilities and intuition? Of course, I believe mediumship and psychic abilities are different. However, I don't feel like it gets spoke a lot of with intuition involved with those two words. How do you look at those?
I agree. I think psychic and mediumship are definitely two different things. What I was thinking about this a lot, and I was like, what do I think? I think it's kind of the question of your own definition. Like, I tend to use them a little bit interchangeably, especially within like marketing in terms of like, I have a podcast that helps you open up to your intuition. I find that that can be a little bit softer to people who, like, for some reason, the word psychic is upsetting to them or confusing, or like, well, does psychic just mean that I know the future? Which I feel like that's the general idea in pop culture is like psychic is I know the future. Psychic is I know you're having a baby girl and her name is going to be Rose. That is the thought of psychic. I use them both interchangeably. Psychic can mean the same thing as intuitive for me. So I think it's just a question of how you want to define it. But yeah, I tend to use the word intuitive when I'm talking to a wider audience, I guess, and then psychic when we really get down into it, because I do believe that we all are, or we all have that ability to tap deeper into it.
Absolutely agree with you. I would have said that was my opinion as well. Are there daily rituals or exercises that you work on that help you strengthen your psychic and or mediumship abilities?
For me now, I think what keeps me sharp psychically is doing my mini readings. If I'm being totally honest, those keep me nice and sharp psychically. I love doing them. They're a lot of fun. Before I had my books open or like offered any services, a few things that I was doing was, and I still meditate often. Doesn't have to be every day, but meditation I find to be really helpful. Just talking to my guides, whether I'm in meditation or just like driving in the car, which absolutely can be meditative. Don't be scared. I know where I'm going. I see the road still. But you know what I mean? It's like that washing the dishes, the
Absolutely.
driving the car, those kind of meditative, just like
Moments.
sounds, yeah. Or not
Hmm.
sounds, but vibes. One of my favorite exercises that I did in development was the book Psychic Witch by Matt Oren. And he has an exercise in there that's just like take one day and just act like you are the most powerful psychic in the world. What do you wake up and you do? What do you wake up and you're thinking about? How do you feel? Like all these things. And I think that is so fun. You can do that at absolutely any level. Like I still do that sometimes. I think it's fun. It keeps you a little bit sharp and it helps just like bring the vibes of intuitiveness or psychicness. But I think if somebody's wanting to do some form of psychic sharpening, tools are helpful. So if you want to grab an oracle deck or a tarot card, I do think that when we become like reliant on a tool to tell us the vibe of every day, it can be a little like it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I'm not one to suggest like a daily poll just because I think sometimes it can be like psychically overwhelming. Like, so I think, yeah, sure, if you want to work with crystals, you want to do like crystal meditation, stuff like that. So I think it's really about just following where's the nudge. I know it's annoying to hear, but meditation is a really helpful tool. And that's definitely something that I leaned into, especially at the beginning of my journey.
And journaling. We haven't even mentioned that yet. It's the infamous
Journaling.
journal and meditate, which looks so
Yeah.
different for everybody. Some people's meditation is sitting quietly, some people it's walking actively.
Yes, some people it can be doing your morning yoga flow. Anthony Lights is a huge journal, just like journal guy. Oh my goodness, everything journal. I like
Love
journaling.
it.
I'm less of a journaler than Anthony, I will say.
I love Anthony Lights, but shameless plug, your mini readings are amazing. I can never get enough of them. So,
Thank you.
listeners, we will tell you exactly how to find that at the end of this. Again, we'll put it in the link notes as well. I had to mention that. You briefly brought it up. So,
Thank you so much.
Chloe, since you mentioned that you're getting mini readings from Haley, I had actually an interesting conversation with a friend. We were talking about how psychic information flows, especially during a reading, before she really started to develop her intuitive flow. She would go see a psychic, but say, "You tell me. I'm not giving you any information." And the psychic was sharing different things, but because she wasn't part of the equation during that reading, she would feel that the reading fell flat or she became doubtful. Then she is major astrologer, loves astrology. And she notices that the more she got into astrology, the more her intuitive flow really picked up. And she said now, on the other side of the table, when she's giving someone an astrological reading, that if they just sit, you tell me what my strengths and weaknesses are, that she says that she can give information, but it's out of context. So
Hmm.
the more that someone has a discussion with her, then she can say, "Oh, okay, this makes sense. This is why I'm seeing potentially trauma in this house or a strength in this house. What you're telling me makes more sense."
Yeah, I definitely have thoughts. I think, yeah, when somebody comes through with the prove it mentality, that is a closed off energy to work with. And it personally just makes me nervous. I think so it adds a layer of a little bit of anxiousness to my energy. Oh, I really want to prove myself. I really want to be able to show this person that this is real. So it adds a layer of craving on my end, which creates resistance, in my opinion. And I've found that to be true. So when I really want it, it's like it just creates a bit of a grind. I don't know how to explain it. Energetically, that's what it feels like. I love reading for clients who are just like excited to be there and ready to share. Not too much, like especially if I'm doing a mediumship reading, I want to know absolutely nothing before I start. I don't want to know that you want to bring through your grandmother or your great uncle or anything. Like I don't want any preconceived notion of who I'm bringing through so that I know that the connection is true and that my ego isn't starting to dabble a little bit. So that's something that I work on a lot, just like not wanting to know too much. However, if I'm sitting there and saying, I'm seeing like a broken down car, did you just have to spend like 5K on your car? And they say, I don't know, you tell me. What am I supposed to do with that? I just told you, could you confirm? And then we can move on. Like that type of thing. So that can be really difficult. I tend to not enjoy reading. I've definitely had people especially for mediumship, come nervous and be like, I had a woman bring her mother who had lost her husband in the last few months, or her ex-husband, I should say. And she was really nervous. Like she was just kind of scared, of a mediumship reading. So it went fine. But yeah, so there's lots of different energies to work with. But I do really enjoy people who are coming open, excited to receive, and are willing to give me some detail. I like to be confirmed when I bring something through. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for me. Okay, great. Let's keep going with that. If it doesn't make sense, let's figure out why. Let me find something else to bring through that will make sense for you. And sometimes stuff makes sense way later. It's that whole flow of time thing. Pretty much everything virtually. I did do a mediumship reading last year for somebody who did not turn their camera on. And that was a fascinating exercise in because a lot of the time people will nod and then you'll be like, okay, I'm on the right track and I can keep flowing with spirit. So that was a really interesting sharpening exercise for me of just listening to their voice and getting only cues from her voice. And it really kept the ego out of every aspect of it. And so that was really fascinating as well. Yeah, in terms of mini readings, obviously I don't have somebody right in front of me, but I do feel as they buy the mini reading, that's their consent for me to tap in. And that's really why I call it a mini reading, because there's like, we don't do super deep detail. I'm getting what your guides or your higher self want you to know. I can get like, oh, maybe this has to do career, blah, blah, blah. But there's not a lot of back and forth in it. So yeah, those are my long-winded thoughts.
The very first reading I ever paid for from you was a spirit guide reading. And I had been painting this, which I am not a painter. So it was very weird that I was doing this. But I kept painting this beautiful woman who was like a part of the nature, and she was very mossy. And you specifically called out every detail in that reading.
A lot of people don't know how to know if they're talking to the spirit guide or if that's the higher self or is that their idea of God or deity. What are your thoughts with that? Because I heard that mini reading and that was beautiful. And I could see that mossy, beautiful, earthen spirit guide. So there was confirmation there, but a lot of people can't visualize that way.
I think that's ever evolving for me personally. I think the details of such anyway, but I do feel they're very different. I think spirit guides, from what I've come to learn and what's resonated with me, some are with us forever, some come and go. Do actually have a conversation with my spirit guides and my past loved ones every single day in the car on my commute to work during my 9 to 5. I believe for me, that's what's allowed me to open up into everything else, because I finally started asking them to show me what's next for me, to bring me to my purpose and to help guide me. But that was very, very scary. So I had to learn to trust and think of what that looked like for me. So during that 2 years of deep analysis, I would say pretty close to 2 years, I recognized for me, spirit guides are a different level of energy, not like a better or a lesser, but a different tangible type of energy who always have my back, which I think could be said for all of them, but in a different way. I feel like they're allowed to step in more minuscule day-to-day activities, whether it's a thought or a guide or a hint or nudge. Whereas, I think past loved ones have their own guides and restrictions with that. And I also think guardian angels are a whole different level, not greater or lesser than, but they can only step in ways. For example, if it's not my time to pass and I'm in a major car accident, it's my belief that that's when guardian angels step in and help. So that's my thoughts, but I'm very curious to hear yours.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I love the idea. Just want to hit on, you said like guides giving a hint. I don't know. I just love that. Yeah, give me hints. I need to know. I think in terms of figuring out the difference, when I'm tapping in specifically, I will be like, hey, I want to meet with guides. So I'm really setting a strong intention. So I think that can be helpful before you start just like hanging out with your guides or your higher self in the car. For some reason, I feel higher self a little bit wants to maybe not do the day-to-day stuff unless you're really specifically being like, let's hang out really often. I think higher self might come through a little bit less than your guides. I think you're right. The guides like to come through day to day, little stuff, blah, 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 that fun stuff. There's a distinct energy for me around, like, I don't know why I want to use the word celestial. It just feels like a little bit more like up there, vibey. Like that is some people call it the wider self, which I really like too. If you don't resonate with the word higher, maybe wider self, there's this like wisdom that comes with the higher self. The advice might be maybe a little bit more wispy. Maybe it's a little bit more like, oh, you're gonna be fine. You just need to work through this. But then you'll have a guide that's like, you are gonna be fine. But what you need to do is start going on a walk and eating your watermelon. Like that type of thing, like that more like day-to-day stuff. Your higher self might feel a little bit more like wispy wisdom. And you can have guides that sound like wispy wisdom too. I have one. Try to see if you can discern the energy a little bit. You feel connected to something, you could ask. You can also just attempt to reach into the energy a little bit and just have a little feel. See what it feels like. Does this feel really vibey and celestial? Does this feel grounded and concrete? Like those types of things. Just see if you can feel a little bit and see what happens next. And be ready for a surprise.
Yes, I love that. What role did healing and shadow work play in developing and really being the psychic and medium that you are now?
At first, I think I didn't realize that healing was part of a spiritual journey. I just was like, I just think I need to figure out what is up with the psychic mediumship stuff in my life and pursue that. And I think the deeper that you get into a spiritual journey, they can kind of just go hand in hand. It's like spiritual journey on the left and healing on your right, and they want to clasp. And I think you can definitely get far. You can get to a certain point without starting to really delve down into the shadow. And then there comes a point where, for some reason, you just know that to get to go further, you might have to dig down first. And shadow work can be done in so many different ways. Shadow work, and I'm no shadow work expert, I will say. Shadow work is definitely something that has come into my practice or understanding in the past 2 years, I would say. I think really the first year and a half, I got to just be like, whoop, like nothing, like I'm just doing this stuff. I'm so excited. And then you dive. So it will come when the time is ready. Like I don't think you have to be like, and now I must. I think you're just going to feel called to it generally. But I just want to plug here, shadow work can be going to regular therapy. That can be where you begin your shadow work journey. You can go to a licensed therapist. And then when you're ready to move, maybe you do some cool hypnosis journeys, or you do lots of journaling. And I think there's just a layered and wholesome approach we can take to this that isn't just one thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think shadow work comes for everybody at different times. I think I started more with shadow work and then was like, oh, bloop, I popped out a little witch baby. How cute. I love it. And that's when I became more, involved in understanding what that looks like and realizing how much I already animated the world, and everything just resonated deeply. But it was and continues to be, the more I deep dive, little things that just aren't working. And I'm like, oh, why isn't that working? And so I am working on getting certified as a life coach for shadow work to help guide people through that in their journey, wherever it is. So I'm very excited to be able to help uplift and move people through those dark moments. And
I love
thank you for
that.
speaking of that.
I'm a big fan of working with somebody for a lot of things. I am a major course and container lady. I love being with somebody to do stuff. And also I'm a huge, I need accountability. Unfortunately, I can only do so much on my own. And it's really helpful to have somebody being like, hey, did you do this? That's just me personally. It's just something that I've found for myself, for better or for worse. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of working with somebody for stuff like this, because I think sometimes you can rock your world with some of the shadow work meditations that you do. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
Oh,
You open some stuff up. So when you're ready to work with somebody that can hold you, I think that's fantastic. The other thing I will say is I think shadow work and growth also go hand in hand. And in the last few months, I was thinking about, this is probably my ego talking mostly, if I'm being real. And I was just like, have I even grown at all? Have I even changed? Have I even addressed anything? I was just having these weird thoughts of I haven't actually done anything in my journey. It was a very strange breakdown moment. And then it was like the universe showed me. I just had a few situations where I actually was able to recognize my own growth and the way I reacted to them. And I was like, oh, I did actually grow. Yeah, thank God. So yeah, I think just a plug, if you are in a growth journey and you feel like, have I done anything? It's likely that you have. And if you're going to ask the question, then you're going to be presented with the ways to know that you have. So yeah, growth does not happen overnight. So just a little plug to just keep chugging along.
Yeah. And there's two other things I think are important to add there is sometimes it looks like a therapist and maybe a support group and maybe a coach and your accountability partner and your tribe of people you've chose. It is definitely not something I would encourage anybody to do alone. It's just too much. And we already do so much alone, right? Yeah, absolutely. What are some ethical considerations for you when you're using your intuition and psychic abilities? The way you deliver your messages, as I mentioned in your intro, it's so uplifting and resonates deeply in such a positive way. And sometimes you don't always have positive things to share. How does that work out?
I think there's a few different approaches people take to this. Some people are like the really blunt, tell it like it is. That really works for some people to receive. I will say I'm a Sagittarius. I have a lot of Sagittarius in my big five. I think three out of my big five are Sagittarius. Sometimes I just joke that I got into this life and was like, let's figure out how much Sag is too much, you know? That's just a little funny joke. So I do tend in regular life to be quite forward in the things that I say. Maybe some would some might describe me as blunt. I'm just like I just tend to share and share a lot. That's why I have a podcast. I got a big mouth. So when it comes to sharing within readings, yeah, sometimes I do. There is this a difficulty. I'm like, oh yeah, like things might be hard the next few months, you know? I think the way that I like to approach it is if I get the message that, yeah, things might be hard the next few months, I always like to tap in again and ask for a follow-up. Like, give me more, give me details about why so we can get a little bit deeper into it and then give me like a solution. Like, what can we do to help ourselves through this time? Because I think it's like how helpful is it to hear that like, oh, it seems like maybe the next few months things are going to be tough. Stop there. What is the point of that? You know, which is, I don't want to sound rude, but, you know, like giving more, if I can pull through more, I think is just helpful. So, yeah, I do always like people to feel like uplifted. And also within any reading I do, mini or otherwise, have some kind of tool or like grounded advice from the guide or higher self that they can actually enact in life. It doesn't happen every time. Some guides are a little bit more not forthcoming with what they want to share, but I do like to try to bring through just like a solution to the toughness, you know, or an encouragement to the toughness. Like this guide really feels like you can do this, you know, just like some form of encouragement and then a little bit
Yeah.
of real life tool.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
delivered with such compassion.
Thank you.
What would be the biggest myth or misconception about intuition or psychics or mediumship that you feel is important and you want to speak to the record and debunk now?
I think there's a few that come to mind, but one I think that is almost having a bit of an interesting resurgence right now is that it is a gift bestowed upon a certain type of person or like a certain person. Started seeing that a little bit more online. I'm like, that's not true. Like everybody has this ability. Mediumship might be a little bit I feel like sometimes you have like the proclivity for it and then you can like work it like a muscle. If you don't have the proclivity for it, you can still find it. But it also doesn't mean that you have to start a business. Like you can just use your intuition to live your life in like a really fulfilled way. That's also something I really truly believe. I think there's this huge thing about like if you are a psychic or a medium or an energy worker, like you must start a business. I just don't think that's true. I think that we can just like enjoy our abilities. That's why I tend to not call them gifts because a gift seems like it's something that's like only bestowed upon a chosen
Mm,
person. So I tend to just like to call them abilities because it's just an ability that we're all born with. And we just got to flex it and open it up a little bit. So I totally believe that everybody can do it. And then obviously there's just a lot of fear mongering around like what you are connecting to. I spoke to that a little bit in the beginning. Yeah, I really invite people to at least start to begin to relax out of the fear because I know it is so, so real, especially if you've had a few jarring experiences, to kind of try to just relax out of that a little bit and hop into like a bit of more like an excitement energy. That can be really, really helpful too. So the fear around it, the fear mongering around, I mean, I still see like weird threads about tarot being of the devil. I'm like, whoa, people are still saying that, you know, it is fascinating. So
wow.
yeah, those are my two biggest ones. It is an ability, not a gift. And there's no devil involved in anything I do.
Yes, I personally believe we all have the psychic ability, just like you spoke of. And, some musicians were born amazing, but they
Right.
got to work on it to become even more fabulous and phenomenal. And to think that everybody who has the psychic ability should create a business, well, then who would be anybody's client? So that's the chicken or egg, I guess. But that's kind of
Yeah.
a funny thought.
Yeah.
Of course, we asked you to bring an invocation to leave our listeners with, but before we ask you to provide that, I first want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can connect with you. I know you're everywhere. Tell the people how they can find you.
I have a podcast called Opening the Door Podcast. You can find it on Apple and Spotify. Website is openingthedoorpodcast.com. I am on Instagram at Opening the Door Podcast, I believe. And I'm on TikTok. I don't really post on there anymore, but my name on TikTok is Haley Bea Psychic. It's spelled Haley Bea Psychic. Maybe I'll start posting on there. I'm not sure. Oh, I'm on Threads. If you
Yes.
are, yeah, if you are on Instagram, make a Threads because Threads is kind of where it's at these days. I really enjoy Threads. Back in the day, people would have on their like fridge that little roll of paper where they would like write or like on a wooden block on their wall, like the little tiny roll of paper where they write the groceries. I kind of treat Threads like that. Like I just write things and just if people walk by and they see it, that's what it is. So that's how I treat Threads. It's kind of like a fun. I'm like a little more off topic there. So if you want to see off topic, Haley, that's where you'll go.
I love it. It is a lot of people supporting other people, and I love it.
It's really fun there. Yeah.
hmm So, could you please leave us with your beautiful invocation? I know we could go on forever. I could chat with you forever, but I know you have things and people to do and see today. So,
I just want to say this has been so fun. Thank you both so much for facilitating and having me on. It's been great. So, my incantation is this. My intuition flows wherever I need it to go. And that's that.
powerful. Love it.
I
Thank you
love it.
so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have met you almost in person.
Almost in person. This has just been such a fun conversation. And yeah, thank you both for asking fantastic questions and allowing me to go on tangents and all the fun stuff.
Thank you
Beautiful.
so much for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you for joining the Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast. Constructive and positive feedback are always welcome. Drop us some fan mail on mysticalmermaidlounge@buzzsprout.com or email us directly mysticalmermaidlounge@yahoo.com. Finally, if you are as passionate as we are about educating and supporting spiritual seekers who are also on a magical journey of divine self-discovery, then we would greatly appreciate your cup of coffee donation. Please brew some joe and pour us a cup at buymeacoffee.com/Mystical Mermaid Lounge. Catch us again at the next high tide.